Hey folks, this is the other Barak coming to you live and direct here from the Holy Land in Israel. We have a video today of Josh Hammer, who recently debated Dave Smith with Charlie Kirk moderating. Let's take a look at what they had to say, and as always, talk about it after.
Do you think Israel has a secret nuclear program, and is that a problem?
Yeah, I think it's not particularly disputed that Israel has a nuclear program. We know exactly where it is based. This is not a particularly hidden thing there. I mean, it's so well known, in fact, Charlie, that I don't know exactly why it's officially a secret. Unofficially, it's not much of a secret. I'm non-Israeli. I have no idea why the exact policy is the way it is. I don't particularly have a program with it. As I said, it's one of the world's worst kept secrets. It kind of just is what it is. But more generally speaking, I don't understand why we're going so far down this rabbit hole of would've, could've, should've. The people, look, let's say something very simple here. The people who said that Donald Trump's involvement in the 37-hour operation of the B-2 bombers flying from Missouri to Iran and back with not a single shot fired at our boys. By the way, as I said, that was partially due to the fact that the IDF had so neutralized the Iranian Air Force and their defenses there. So the fact that he was able to accomplish that so amazingly there, we should have seen that coming, because it was actually pretty easily foreseeable. And the people who did not see that coming are the people who have lost credibility to comment, frankly, on these affairs. People who warned about thousands and thousands and thousands of dead American lives, who said that China and Russia would swoop in and that this would be World War III. Well, you know what? God bless you all, because you apparently survived World War III. It was the shortest World War III of all of our lifetimes.
I didn't say any of that. So what are you...
Dave, I restrained Josh. Josh, keep going.
Again, this is the Donald Trump foreign policy doctrine in action. It is quick surgical strikes. Roger Stone was talking about it earlier. It's exactly right. He is not a neocon. Neoconservatism, bad. Isolationism, also naive and stupid. Donald Trump agrees with both those things. The nationalist, realist, MAGA, America First approach to foreign policy is to have strong nationalist allies that are generally capable of securing and patrolling their own regions in a way that redounds not merely to the allies' national interests, but also to the American national interest. That is exactly what Israel has been doing for 40, 50 years, as they have taken out Islamists and Sharia supremacist thugs in Gaza, in Yemen, Hezbollah. I mentioned Fuad Shakur, the Hezbollah jihadi who killed 241 Marines in Beirut, Lebanon, 1983. There's a million examples there.
This is an important anecdote for people in the United States who don't understand that Israel is an asset to America. And believe it or not, and by the way, I'm not a huge fan of the reliance on Israel's behalf of the United States for its foreign military aid. In fact, Israel has put itself in a position where it needs the United States in order to survive, but they also have this mutual relationship because Israel is the only democracy within the Middle East. But what Josh is saying is important because Israel does do a lot of the dirty work for America, saving American people from the terrorism that has seeped its way in the Middle Eastern region and now into America, saving it from growing. This is the one anecdote that many of the people who are against Israel forget to, I don't want to say forget to mention, because they are aware that there's a military presence in Israel and they just think that they're doing terrorist things against the enemies of Israel. What they don't realize is, because they're already anti-American from their own ideology, is that they think that Israel's the reason that there are issues within America, that there are issues within the Middle East. So they recognize that there is a mechanism, but their mechanism is completely reversed, because they see the Houthi rebels and they see Hamas, they see Hezbollah as the asset that America needs, which is fucking bananas.
That is the definition of an America First ally, and what just happened in the 12-day war is an encapsulation of the America First Trump doctrine, that in this case, this tag team between the U.S. and Israel against the mutual threat of Iran in action. Has anyone, just put your hand up and make some noise, have you been, any of you, to the parts of Israel that were slaughtered by Hamas? Anyone? All right, a few people, okay. So I was also there a few months after it happened. If you haven't been there, it's very difficult to describe what you see. You see these kibbutzim, these small villages. By the way, these were typically left-wingers. These were peaceniks that were establishing their villages on the border to try to engage in pen pal diplomacy, if you will, with the Arabs of Gaza. These are very kind of left-wing peacenik people. And you see just kitchenware throughout the streets, teddy bears everywhere, blood-stained walls, bullet holes as far as the eye can see. It's very difficult to describe. The only time that I had that similar feeling walking around places like Kfar Aza was when I was in Treblinka, the Nazi concentration camp itself. So
notice how Josh is talking about things he saw with his own two eyes, which I think is an important authority to to put yourself out. Like, it's important for him to make sure that people in the audience and people watching this video understand he has the authority to talk about this. This is where the storytelling aspect becomes really important. And he knows sitting there that Dave Smith has not been there. So it's not only a good chess move, it's also, one builds authority when you talk about something you've seen with your own two eyes, and you can't strip that away from somebody.
Look, in total, and there's a brand new report talking about the extent of the mass raping and sexual violence that Hamas committed on October 7th. Combined, you're looking at roughly 1,200 people slaughtered. By the way, not all Israeli nationals. Dozens of Americans were either murdered or taken hostage in Gaza as well. In total, something like 40 to 50 different nationalities were represented of those who were slaughtered on October 7th. In fact, just looking at it from a very strictly, narrowly American perspective, October 7th amounted on its own terms to the largest American-only hostage crisis since Tehran in 1979, because of all the American citizens who were then taken hostage into Gaza. So it was an unspeakable atrocity. We don't really have all the answers to this day as to how it happened. Perhaps we never will. I certainly hope to get some clarity at some point there. But it was the single deadliest day for the Jewish people since World War II. And given Israel's small size, it's roughly the equivalent of 45 to 50 9/11s, if you can possibly contextualize that. So that was what precipitated this war. And it was a war that Israel, Charlie, did not want, as you know. Hamas took over in 2007. Israel repeatedly, time and time again, decided not to try to topple Hamas under the idea that you could potentially have an even worse alternative, better to deal with the devil that you know, and so forth there. October 7th, I think extremely reasonably, given the sheer level of carnage and terror and just outright satanic, demonic evil that happened, they quite reasonably concluded that policy simply had to end. And what's happened in Gaza for the past year and a half, almost 2 years now, has been a protracted war in one of the most condensed urban environments in the world. It is very, 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 very difficult war-fighting conditions. I would like to remind you just of at least one or two very simple facts. One is that, let's not forget that Hamas, who Israel is at war against in Gaza, is a U.S.-recognized foreign terrorist organization. They are indistinguishable in that respect from Al-Qaeda or ISIS or any of these other foreign terrorist organizations. They are a rabid jihadist network that, like all these other jihadis and Sharia supremacists, also wants to kill not merely Jews, but Christians and all infidels. They say that very clearly in the 1987 founding charter. That is point number one. Point number two, Charlie, you mentioned that this is a very Christian audience. I am Jewish. We happen to share most of the Bible, and I am a firm believer in Genesis 1:27, that we are all made in God's image. That is one of my foundational beliefs in everything. I write about this at great length in my book, Israel and Civilization. To me, that's the single foundational ethical imperative of all of Western civilization. It informs my pro-life views and so much else. So I, like you and like so many others, also weep whenever innocent people are dead. There are 2 points to make, and I'll make them very briefly because I know I'm sensitive to time. One is that we know, because we actually have people like John Spencer, the head of urban warfare studies at West Point, who have actually been able to crunch numbers. We know that when you actually look at the civilian to combatant death ratios in Gaza, it is the most humane civilian to combatant death ratio in the entire history of urban warfare. John Spencer was there, by the way, in 2016, 2017 in Fallujah, Iraq, during the Trump-led ISIS counterinsurgency. The United States Army, God bless them, did not even do quite as well as the IDF in terms of civilian to combatant death ratio, according to John Spencer of West Point. Point number two, which is a very simple point that Dave Smith and his friends always like to look over, is that when you're just trying to ascribe moral culpability to every single tragic death in Gaza, Charlie, you made this point so well in your recent debates over in England against these highfalutin British faux intellectuals at Cambridge and Oxford, when you said that the moral culpability comes to people who are using human shields. That is just how it works. That is the law of war. That is the law of combat. That is just basic morality and logic 101. So that is essentially how I...
Josh mentioned John Spencer, who I also had the opportunity to meet. And look, if I could convince an anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian to pick up John's book to understand the tactics of war and how war works, because 99.9% of fucking people on the planet have no idea what war is, what war looks like, what it actually is on the battlefield, what war is, period. How many people in the world can raise their hand and be like, I've been in war? Not that many. The majority know. The videos you see on the internet is not a reflection of what happened before what you see on the video on the internet in order to understand what war actually looks like. Which is why I have An incredible amount of respect for people who have chosen to go to the battlefield. Yet again, I will pull another name. Douglas Murray, who I talk about a lot on this channel, has been to Khan Yunis. He went to the tunnels. Why does he write about the tunnels in his new book? Because, guys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, he was fucking there. Why do I talk about Israel? I live here. Why do I now talk about South Africa? I just came from there, and Morocco and Spain. Why? I just visited those places. Why do I not talk about Kenya? I've never fucking been there. You know? Why don't we make that a rule? How about we talk about the places that we've been to because we have the authority to talk about it. I've been there, bro. Have you? No. Okay, so then maybe you shouldn't give your 2 cents. Right? Douglas Murray, Dave Smith, Joe Rogan had a great point. He asked Dave, when was the last time you were in the Middle East? Dave said, I've never been there. Douglas said, you've never been there. Dave said, oh, no, what am I now? I'm not allowed to talk about it because, well, you've never been to Nazi Germany. Are you allowed to talk about it? Douglas Murray, what did he say? Yeah, you can't time travel, but you can travel. You can. Dave Smith has an American passport. He can come to Israel. That boy can go to Egypt. Let's send Dave Smith to Egypt. And since he's against the state of Israel, fine, bro. Don't go to Israel. You have one other entry point into Gaza. Not sure they're going to let you in. Maybe you should go try. It's Egypt. If you go to Egypt and you go to the north, you go to Rafah crossing, go try to go into Gaza. And when you're asked why you're there and they don't let you in because you're still somebody who's supporting the pro-Palestinian movement and they still don't let you in, your double standard will then make a lot of sense to you, bro. To the rest of the pro-Palestinian camp. You don't want to go to Israel? Fine. Actually, brother, don't come to Israel. Sababa, enbaya, no problem, brother. Good thing there are 2 doors. One is on the eastern border. That's Israel. You don't want to go through there? Fine. One is on the southern border of Gaza, on the northern border of Egypt. They meet. Why don't you go there? Try to go into Gaza. Try to go see it for yourself. Then talk about it. You won't be able to go through. Why? Well, there you go. Egypt fucking closed the border. Egypt will not let them. Egypt won't save the Palestinians inside of the Gaza Strip. They won't save the Gazans. They don't offer entry points into Egypt because that's what you do as a neighboring country when there is war being conducted and you have no fucking skin in the game. That is what you do. You help open humanitarian corridors. This is what we've seen throughout other wars in history. It's what you do. Why? Because nobody likes to see people die. Where the fuck would Israel send its people, bro? Lebanon? They're gonna open their borders for Barack. Probably not. Syria? Probably not. Jordan? Probably not. Egypt? Probably not. Iraq? Probably not. Iran? Definitely fucking no. Yemen? Probably not. Well, you know what? I've already gone beyond the borders because on the western side is the fucking ocean. On the eastern side is Jordan. On the northern front is Lebanon and Syria. And on the southern point is Egypt. None of these places would ever open up their doors for me, the Jew and the Israeli. So then why wouldn't they open it up for their Muslim brothers and sisters? The Palestinians inside of the Gaza Strip? There's another entry point into Egypt. Why are they not opening it up for them? Dave, these are the questions, bro. These are the questions we should be asking ourselves. For real, for real. Hopefully I can have a conversation with Dave one day. Thank you so much for all your support. See you guys next video.